Greetings, YouTube, or Lubers. It's Alan here, and I'm back, and I'm gonna do a week 1/week 2 tier list for CC for the RTN season. If you didn't check out already, last week I made a tier list video of my prediction thoughts before the meta, and now that we've seen sort of like some decks and some performance results, I decided let's go back and sort of redo my tier list, and it's gonna be like mostly based on the performance that we've seen so far in the tournaments and road to nationals around the world, but I'm also gonna mix in some of like my own thoughts of like whether some hero is overrepresented or underrepresented. And before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Um, Hopefully, if this video can get 10 likes by tomorrow, then maybe I'll post like my Bravo deck tech that I'll be playing for Road to Nationals. Although everybody knows how to play Bravo, so it's not that big a deal, anyways. All right, Azalea. Once again, just gonna shove her in D tier. Nothing much to say there. Bravo, I'm gonna say solid A tier. Nothing really changes there in my opinion. Bravo is just solid overall. He did win an RTN. Starvo and Chain were really bad matchups, and his only real bad matchup now is Prism. So solid A tier. Briar up in the S tier. We've seen Belittle Briar pop off, and we've seen just regular Briars also do well with like a lot of the 0 for 4s. Channel Not Heroic is a very good card. Nothing too surprising there. Dash, I'm gonna lower her down to C tier. I think every format people was always just like, oh my goodness, Dash is like so good into everything, but then people actually play her and she doesn't really do much. So that's just how I feel so far. Dorinthia, I'll go ahead keep in A tier, just like my last tier list. Kano in C tier. Same thing. People are more prepared for arcane and damage now with Iyslander out, with things like Oasis Respite. Kano, I think, suffers a lot from things like that. Katsu, once again, I'll put in B tier. Nothing much there. I think just in terms of like the aggro decks, he's just slower. You could say he's like more interactive, more mid-range with things like Flick Flack, Take the Tempo, Mask, more on hits with his hero ability. But I just think that sort of like mid-rangey style just kind of loses out to a lot of the top decks. So unfortunately, I'll put him in B for now. Levia, I'll just put in D tier. Don't expect her to do much really. Lexi, once again, I'll keep an A tier. Oldhim, I'm moving him down to A tier. And I had him in S tier previously. I think that while Oldhim is still strong, he kind of is like, he's definitely a reactive hero, so he kind of the meta needs to sort of kind of settle before I think Oldhim can sort of shine more in sort of like a wider meta. It can be a tough call whether or not to play Oldhim and how to build the deck specifically. Prism S tier. Even though Prism gets dunked on these aggro heroes, she can still like win games with Red Heralds and things like Arc like Sentinel on the right turn, and it's I don't think you'll ever be fatiguing Briar or Viserai, but you can still squeak out wins for sure. And she just dunks on certain heroes like Bravo, Oldhim, Dorinthia, etc. Reiner, I don't know. It's kind of a toss up for C and D for me. I guess I'll put him in B. Honestly, I have no. I mean, he did win an RTN, so I guess I'll put him in B. I mean, Dash also won an RTN, I think, but I mean, I guess I could put Dash back in B. Boltyn, D tier. I don't care what people say. Am I gonna be peer pressure to put Boltyn in C? I don't know. I just don't think Boltyn is very good. Do I think he will win less events than Kano? Maybe not, but I just think Kano has at least like more reason to be played, if that makes sense. Viserai S tier. We've seen Hayden Dale win on Viserai. We've seen another winning list on Viserai that doesn't run Belittle package, I believe. So I think Viserai is still strong again. Very good aggro deck. Can push out like 15 to 20 damage turns, even on like a 4-card hand, which is absolutely insane. But in terms of the matchup versus Briar, I honestly have no idea how that goes. So I think it can be somewhat Viserai favored, but not 100% sure there. They're just both really strong aggro decks. Dromai. Based on, if I were to base this off performance, Dromai would be an S tier. I think it's interesting because Dromai is, I would consider favored into Prism, because her dragons are just harder for Prism to deal with, and she can clear auras very easily. And then versus Lexi, not too sure how that matchup goes. Versus Oldhim, I think Dromai also is favored. Oldham, while he is a guardian and has poppers, he just doesn't have quite enough, I would say. I would say she's unfavored into Bravo, unfavored into Dorinthia, just because Dorinthia can build up like 4 or 5 counters on her dragons and then start swinging face for like 6, 7, 8, 9, which is kind of insane, honestly. So maybe there's like some counter, maybe it's just like a matchup thing that people need to learn about how to play Dromai into Dorinthia, but I'm not quite sure there. And then Dromai into the rest of the field is actually like pretty decent. She has a better matchup than Prism, I would say, into these. Oh well, does Dromai do better into the aggro decks? So Dromai gets up and running faster than Prism does, but Prism has access to things like Red Heralds and Arclight Sentinel. So they each have their own strengths into aggro, but I guess people are saying that Dromai is a bit stronger into aggro than Prism is, so I would say I guess she can be put in the S tier. I don't really know for sure, to be honest, but let's just put it there. Fai, I think Fai is honestly kind of underrated right now. I think that even though he's like an aggro deck that's like so somewhat simpler to build than say like a Dromai, there people are still kind of figuring out the right balance for his deck, in terms of like, you know, having that all-in plan with like Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, Vest of the First Fist, but also being able to sideboard into things like Mask of Momentum plus Kodachis for matchups that force you to go a bit slower, for example. So I think Fai, I feel like he outraces the aggro decks on like a full aggro plan, but he is more frail than the other two against like disruption and things like that. So if people can figure out how to make him more robust and sort of less of a loss into things like Lexi or Bravo while still beating the aggro decks, I think Fai can go right back up into S tier. But I guess for now I'll put him down in A tier again. And then Iyslander I'll also put in C. I don't think she really has that much going for her. Well, no, I think people are also trying to figure her out also. Kind of hard to say here, honestly. This like B and C tier, I kind of have like the same-ish. Like honestly, I could have like 4 tiers and call it a day. This probably is a better representation of the meta, I would say. At least for myself personally. Yeah, these 4 tiers, I would say. So I would say overall this meta is shaping out to be quite interesting. The fact that we have like, you know, 2 aggro decks and 2 illusionist decks at the top of the meta seems a bit counterintuitive, because if you think about it, like let's say the Pro Tour was tomorrow and everyone agreed that these 4 decks were the strongest, right? And if the highest representation of these 4 decks or was these 4 decks, then wouldn't the aggro decks just beat out on all the illusionists? In theory, yes, but you know, the illusionists will just dunk on everyone else who's like playing someone that they like more than these, you know, generic aggro decks. So it's weird for sure. I would say it's less of a triangle now, just because like even though Oldham is supposed to like, I don't even know if Oldham is like necessarily heavily favored into these aggro decks. I think Oldham does have potential to fatigue. Maybe Briar, Viserai, less so. I think Viserai is honestly just kind of crazy with the damage he can put out turn by turn, but not too sure. It's weird. Yeah, this is what I would say for now. I'm not sure how I would order things specifically. Maybe something like this. Yeah, I don't know if Viserai or Briar's first, but I guess just off results, like they all basically tied for the amount of Road to National wins that they've gotten so far. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens once Prism does Living Legend out, though, because the format will definitely shake up a lot. Oldham and Bravo will come back in and start swinging harder, but if they can't beat these aggro decks, then we'll have to see. Let's see. Let's look at the B tier real quick. Would I rather play against Katsu or Dash? Probably, I would say Katsu is probably stronger. I honestly think the Wizards are probably at the bottom. And then this tier is about the same as last time. So yeah, I would say this is my updated tier list. There are a lot of things I definitely could have foreseen. A lot of people notified me of my last tier list that Dromai and Viserai are definitely were low on my radar, but performed very well this Road to National season. But I do think that, you know, as things, you know, continue to shape out, I think Fai can definitely creep back up in there. Viserai is interesting for sure. I did not expect him to be this fast or this strong, but he still is. And then Dromai, I think just the fact that my local scene was testing mainly with like Bravo and Dorinthia into Dromai, we were just like, wow, it's really rough for her. But you know, she definitely has some play. A lot of cards like Burn Them All, which I initially on Spoiler Season thought was bad. Like now that seeing it in play, Burn Them All is actually such a crazy card. And yeah, I would say this is my updated tier list. Nothing too much to say here. I'll probably be playing Bravo or Fai this coming weekend at my Road to Nationals. And I'll probably post a Bravo deck tech tomorrow too, along with it. But the thing about Bravo is that like everyone kind of already knows how to build them. So should I even post a deck tech? I don't know. It's not like my deck's that much different from everyone else's. But anyway, so that was it for me. And see ya.